Welcome to this week's episode of our Midweek conversation at First Baptist Sweetwater, where we strive to be the first responders of God's love. I'm sitting here in Studio A with my co-host Teak Hamilton. And Teak, I feel like that we need to have a bit of an intervention.
Okay.
Well, I just happen to know, I don't know if how long you may have been a part of our podcast listening group. But we've had a conversation since before Christmas about when it was appropriate to start singing Christmas songs and putting up Christmas decorations.
Right.
You remember some of those conversations?
Yes.
Well, I noticed since Christmas, in fact, after the new year, two things kind of stand out to me in our relationship.
Okay.
I heard you sing a Christmas song the other day in the office.
You did?
And then on Facebook, I see that you have a Christmas tree in your yard.
We have an evergreen tree in our yard. That tree has no decorations on it. And it actually, as of about an hour ago, it fell over.
Oh.
The snow melted that was holding it up and it's fallen over.
Well,
and as for singing a Christmas song, you can ask Stacy. I always have some tune going through my head, but rarely does it have the correct words going with the song. Stacy will confirm that.
Well, I think you were as one of those office things where you were going from one room to the next, and there was a tune that was coming out, and I laughed to myself.
I don't deny that there was probably some noise.
Well, I didn't know if you were starting early or if it was just kind of a lingering Christmas effect.
That happens to me.
Well, welcome to the new year.
It's 2021.
It's day one for the church.
Day one for the church.
Man, I'll tell you what, this weekend was a beautiful snow.
Mm-hmm.
And
which we don't say often in West Texas.
Right, I know. It seems like the last two have been pretty nice for us. This one happened to fall on a Sunday, and it was one of those things where we just decided that it might be best particularly since we have a live worship service or a live stream opportunity through what we're doing, that if our guys could get here and we could get here, we could pull this off. And so we got started on our first Sunday back. I say first Sunday back with
your
me,
first Sunday back.
Yeah, with me back in on the stage. And so I decided to do something a little different because I wanted to kind of, for whatever reason, preserve this series that we had in mind. And so I kind of went off the chart there with some things that I'd been reading and contemplating during that time that I was away.
Mm-hmm. And it was really, really good. I stole a clip from YouTube, sent it to you, sent it to some of our friends, and it was a good clip.
Well, I noticed that you sent it to me, and I did listen to it.
It might be the quote of the year for 2021.
Well, I don't.
Day one of the church. It was the quote of the year.
I'll tell you, it was an interesting time, and it was. I mean, I still struggle with doing live stream only. It doesn't seem like that the thoughts tend to flow as well, and just I can't get in a groove. It seems like, but. Or I guess I have that moment where I'm searching for a word, and when there's people there, you can kind of feed off their reactions and stuff, and kind of get back on track. And without that, and with our setup where the cameras are so far away, it's a pretty challenging thing. It wasn't something I was looking forward to, but really wanted to kind of begin sharing. It was one of those things that started in my heart as a conversation. Through my journaling and creating ideas for future content for either our church or just for something that I might use elsewhere. And we talked about some of the things there, but probably a lot of what I shared Sunday you and I had not talked about.
Not in this type of forum.
Right. And so really the first thing that I started with and that you're referencing is that we ought to learn, if we're interested in loving others first, then we really need to learn to speak with love. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, difficult for us because we have so many platforms through which we can speak.
It's so easy, and social media is the obvious one that gives everybody a voice, and that voice comes across way too often without love.
Right.
And the convicting part is that I don't expect people who don't follow Jesus to come across with love every time. I do think it's okay for us to expect Christians to come across with love when we speak. And so when you see social media posts by Christians that isn't speaking love, then that's where your quote comes in, that maybe if we can't speak love, we shouldn't be speaking at all. And so Robert Akers summed it up and said, yeah, there's more people in this world that need to have the mama that tells them if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. And they need a mama stand over their shoulder while they're typing on Facebook or I guess Twitter.
Well, and that's my struggle. I mean, I do want to engage in some of those conversations. I really feel like that I have something to say, but I've really dialed it back through the influence of our experience at First Baptist Sweetwater, where we talk about how others really know that we're Jesus followers.
Right.
It's by the way that we love, and if we can't speak in a way that demonstrates that love, then we've really destroyed our witness and testimony.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because then we become like everybody else.
Yeah.
We're just in a culture where we want to yell and scream all the time and really convince nobody because we're not living out what we're screaming about.
One of the things, and in fact, I heard this morning in listening to a podcast. I was listening to a pastor, and he said it, and it should be hashtagged, that we need to understand that words matter.
Yeah.
Words really do matter, and if we try to set our sights as believers on speaking with love, then those words do matter, and they will start to resonate. It's hard to argue against love.
Yeah, when we move away from speaking love, we have, in essence, turned the other person into the villain, and we forgot that they're created in the image of God just as we are. And it's so easy. I mean, the popular memes are always about politicians. And it's so easy to poke at politicians and to say, God doesn't love what this person is doing. But we forget God created them in the same image that God created us in. And we're called to love and speak love. And when we tear that down, we're tearing down the image of God also. And if that's not convicting enough to make us change what we post on social media, then there's probably an issue with how good of a disciple or how we live out our life as a disciple.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm struggling with now is I tend to not speak at all. Because I think the other side, the far other side, the polar opposite to what you described, is becoming so kind of mushy with our Christian speak that it's really irrelevant. And so as a result, I kind of sit here and do nothing. So really, as I shared that Sunday, and these messages always speak to me first, and I want them to get into me before I ever speak them out loud. And I'm really, trying to consider how I can move into an experience where I do learn to speak love. I think, so I did something in developing that point where I said that we speak love and the gospel.
Yes. Yeah, that was part of that clip.
And so I think what happens, and the reason I put that down was that it objectifies what we talk about speaking in love. That there's an end that's greater than just this relationship that we could have through loving other people. The greater end is actually knowing the gospel, which is Jesus. Regardless, I mean, I know there's a wide discussion about gospel, but ultimately we're talking about the truth about Jesus, right. I think, very simply put. And, it's easy just to speak love or to do things that are out of love, but ignore the gospel. And so we tend to maybe want to, with good intentions, lead with one or both or neither or the other. And it becomes, I know it, but it gets, it starts to lose. I feel like it starts to lose its influence in the world. And so, several issues that I feel like that we talked about Sunday. I encourage you to go back and to listen to that. Even though it's not one of my proudest moments in communication, I think the points are solid.
Oh yeah,
and they help us understand, at least start to build this language and this mindset. If nowhere else, at least here in in Sweetwater, in Little Sweetwater, in First Baptist Church.
Right.
We can be a part of that and help people understand the gospel in other ways.
And sometimes that idea of speaking love is how we also call people out when they're not speaking love.
Right.
One of my rules with students, especially students in leadership, is if you post something on social media and I see it and it's appropriate, I'm going to call you on it. And if you're dumb enough to post it publicly, I'm going to publicly call you on it. and the problem is, it's so easy for students and me to have that relationship and me to be able to say that to them. It's a lot more difficult for me to say that to an adult because they're my peers. At least with students, I have that relationship of understand, I expect a lot out of you as a leader. And so I'm going to call you out when I say that. And I'm fine with you calling me out too. If I do something, say something. But then you've got your peers that it's more difficult because when you say something, usually it'll make a person angry.
Right.
Or they'll say, well, who are you to judge me? The Bible says don't judge. Oh, okay. So now you're jumping into there but you can clearly call out when someone's not speaking love. Mm-hmm. But it's probably going to end not very well.
Yeah.
So it makes it difficult.
Well, it is challenging, and one of the things, the backdrop to how I started all that was with this phrase that we've already used, is that it's day one for the church.
Right.
And I really thought that was an intriguing idea when I read that during the holidays, but it also it seems like it helps us to understand that we want to be constantly creating ourselves and our identity and who we are.
Right.
And I like the idea also because it moves us back to the origin of creation and initiated by God. And so, and then all of our faith is, I think, some ways about that and about God's creation in us and learning that and living in that and sharing that. But my thought, the troubling thought that I had in feeling like that was a significant phrase was things have gotten so messy over the last year in a pandemic, political, or an election year, and then with the racism that we've experienced and just the anger that you sense in people and their tone. It seems that we're in a place where if we're not very, very careful right now, the church risks losing its voice.
Oh, definitely. We had this conversation through texting with some of the ministers that we lose the ability to speak prophetically to the situation when we start siding one way or another and we don't side with Jesus.
Right.
I mean, that's simplifying it, obviously. But even as you were talking, I was thinking, how different would this last year have been if Christians, just Christians, said, I'm going to respond as Jesus did, and for the benefit of everybody else, I'm going to consider myself as lesser. And it's not about me, it's about the gospel, it's about God's kingdom. The whole pandemic experience, political experience, race, all that would be totally different if just the people who claim Christianity did that. And I'm saying that there were times that I did not do that.
Well, no, and we've talked about that. I mean, that's where accountability is needed.
Right.
And so it's because it is hard to self-monitor some of those things, or if nothing else, but from the things that we either like or we repost or share. But as we think about coming into this new year and have the opportunity, I do believe that the church ought to experience a day one experience and life and understanding that the opportunity is great before us, but it's also a challenge. It's going to be very challenging, I think.
We had our leadership meetings last night, and one of the things you said that stuck with me was it's rare that a church that's been around for 140 years gets the opportunity to have a day one experience. And we have that chance to do that.
And I think that's in part why I'm energized, and I've talked a lot about that with you and with our leadership last night. And so it is an exciting time, even though things are not fixed, and there's still a high degree of uncertainty. And then sometimes we may even be blindsided by a snow weekend.
Yeah.
But
I'm okay with that, though. I do love snow.
Sunday, we'll continue this conversation and get to our series, which is the one mission of Jesus, and us understanding what that mission is. And that mission, like we've said, is the gospel. Jesus said that he came to seek and to save the lost. And so we have the opportunity to kind of evaluate our own life in the way that we view that and the way that we best speak with love and the gospel. I think it becomes very personal at that point in the way that God enables us to do that. And so I believe, if I can recall the 4 weeks, we're talking about seek, ask, send, and serve. So 4 good weeks leading up to the week of the start of Lent. We're pretty excited. We just had our meeting today, and we're pretty excited about what God has ahead of us over these next 3 months, really. So anyways, so thanks for joining us this week, and keep on singing those Christmas songs and leave up your Christmas decorations if you want to. And Teak and I will not judge you.
Okay.
And we look forward to seeing you Sunday.
See you then.